This is the upper level water vapor loop. Gives a good indication of the, like I talk about every day, the upper level flow in the atmosphere. We have a kind of complex setup in the southeast today. You have what looks to be a tropospheric a tut off the southeast coast, and which is not uncommon for this to be at this time of year. It's a pretty common feature. What it's doing is helping to induce some shear on our. Wish my tool was working right here, so I could draw. But anyway, there's some shear being induced on the low pressure system off the coast of Florida. We have another upper level low kind of pinching off here in the northeast Gulf with a upper level high pressure system. You can see the clockwise flow here, just kind of pushing all this. You can see the flow this way, pushing all this moisture around. For the southeast, for our weather, that means that we're kind of missing out on any rain chances, at least for the local area. You can see some enhanced moisture right on the coast. Maybe have to do with a boundary that's set up. So on the northern and western fringes of this high pressure, you see there's a upper level feature that's enhancing the rain in Texas again. Another short wave in the flow, Arkansas. It looks like a frontal boundary trying to move through the mid-Atlantic. At the base of that trough, you can see some enhancement of the rain going on, like we showed in the radar loop. And also in the northern tier, we have a complex flow with a pretty potent upper level low pressure over the northwest, and with enhanced jet streaks. You can see these flows coming in here off the Pacific. But this is really enhancing rainfall, a complex pattern. It's really amazing all the stuff that's going on in the atmosphere when you look at this every day. Anyway, these persistent upper level features and MCVs and things that are developing over the different parts of the U.S. are enhancing rainfall in a lot of different places. These stagnant patterns are not uncommon this time of year, but they've been very persistent over the United States, and I sure hope things calm down soon. I mean, when I was looking at it yesterday, it looks like things from a flooding perspective might be calming down, but with this system possibly moving back on shore, we'll have to see what kind of flooding risk that poses when the moisture, regardless of whether this develops, is going to bring moisture into the Gulf Coast and Florida in the next couple of days. We'll move on to the 500 millibar flow next, which is the mid-level flow in the atmosphere, just so you can see a little bit better what it looks like. So at the mid-levels of the atmosphere, which is 500 millibars. You can see we have a really zonal flow going on at the mid-levels with a like an upper level feature off the a mid-level feature off the Gulf Coast. I mean, off the California coast. Excuse me. That trough mid-level shortwave is apparent that I showed you on the upper levels, reflected at the mid levels too there as it moves through. Um, you can see broad, it's really broad flow here, ridging um, over the good lower portion of the United States, with the flow enhanced right off into northeast, north of the kind of the U.S. of Maine and the northeast, with some enhanced flow right on the Great Lakes. This is Thursday. You can see broad, high pressure, just not a lot of the mid levels. It's not reflected very well. So I'm going to go back up to the upper levels to get a better depiction of this. You can see the high pressure kind of flattened out here. This is on the 18th. And it stays that way with some really strong flow at the upper levels, overspreading the northeast on the 20th, which is Sunday. With possibly a little upper level feature developing, kind of hanging out there on the Gulf Coast with Maine. It doesn't seem like it does very much, like enhancing anything really. Just kind of reflected there at the upper levels. Let's take a look at the low levels. You can see the at the lowest levels, the enhanced moisture transport continues at the low levels. This is just a depiction of a low-level jet that happens every night, strengthens and wanes during the day. This moisture transport, it kind of backs up against the front range of the Rockies, which is not uncommon because it just can't go over the Rockies that way. So it'll serve to enhance moisture in these areas in the coming days. Next, we're going to talk about the heat risk for this week, and then we're going to go over the flooding risk, severe weather, and then the tropics, and quickly go over the future radar for the next couple days. As far as the heat risk goes in the coming days, first I want to show you the current temperatures throughout the nation. 70s, 60s. You know, it's with some frontal boundaries so you can see where all the temps are. I know that it's not a big deal, but I wanted to show you where everything is. Of course, it's still hot as you know what in the desert southwest. With the surface trough along the coast here, that's what enhanced the rainfall along the coast yesterday, the southeast. Different troughs in different parts of the United States, which enhances rainfall. and there's a stalled frontal boundary with that cold front I talked about. Another frontal boundary kind of draped over the upper Midwest. Um, I'd like to live in Seattle and Portland right now, nice and cool in the 50s. And even on the front range of the Rockies, 58, 64. Not a bad morning, but you go to the southeast, it's, as you call it, air you can wear. So we look at the daily maximum temps in the coming days. '90s to 100 along the front range of the Rockies. The upper Midwest is somewhat cooler as that cold front comes through. And as you go through the days, the heat builds back into the upper Midwest, high plains. Stays hot for a good part of the nation. Really not cool anywhere, even in the mountains, it's going to be warm. So, what's your general theme? It's going to be hot. As far as current hazards go, watches and things like that. Excuse me. We have flood watches in the green areas. Flash flood warning in Texas. Again, Mid-Atlantic heat advisory up in the Northeast along the coast. Red flag warning. I think it's a red flag warning. Severe thunderstorm watch up here in the upper Midwest. Severe thunderstorm warnings and a lot of different heat and fire related warnings out west. Even the downslope region of the Cascades over here. You have wind advisory as well up here in the high plains, upper Midwest, Northwest plains area, and also a flood watch in Arizona, which is monsoon rains kicking in. Going back to the maximum temps real quick. With the temps being this high, wherever there's a lot of moisture, the heat index is going to be pretty nasty. So, especially in the southeast, anywhere in the south where you have a lot of moisture and these temperatures, as always, you got to be prepared for that. Drink a lot of water. You know the drill. Just don't go out in the middle of the day and run 10 miles because you're probably gonna not do well. So don't do what I used to do. As far as the sense of rainfall, go through this real quickly. Through 12Z today, which is like 8 a.m. You have a moderate risk in southern Texas again, Mid-Atlantic. Slight risk surrounding both these areas. And you have marginal risks all along the southeast coast, all the way to the northeast and northern tier states, parts of New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee. Day two, day one, day two, which is really today, but today after 12Z. So we go back and look at the WPC again. Yeah, 15th to the 16th. Okay. Anyway, day two, of course, the threat increases in Florida with the low pressure moving through the area, Texas, Arizona, Mid-Atlantic, Upper Midwest. Day 3, as that system moves in the Gulf, enhanced rainfall all along the Gulf Coast. Again, slight chance of Pennsylvania, broad marginal risk on the central U.S. and up around the Great Lakes, and slight risk squarely in the middle of the U.S. down to New Mexico, Arizona, marginal. We move to day 4 and day 5. You see they already have a moderate risk in Louisiana, Mississippi, slight risk surrounding it for that possible tropical development moving in. It goes to show you that this, even if the system undeveloped into a huge storm, it could bring a lot of rainfall to the area with a wide swath in the east of the Mississippi with a slight risk in the Ohio Valley, Iowa, marginal risk all the way down into the desert Southwest. Day 5, another slight risk along the coast here. Another, as you can see, slight risk in Ohio Valley again. A large marginal risk for these areas here: Arizona, Mexico, Colorado, Nebraska, parts of South Dakota, North Dakota, Kentucky, Tennessee, all those states. I'm not going to read them all off, but you can see those from the map here. So the flooding risk continues. I don't know if its pattern is pretty persistent. Hopefully, we get out of it at some point. Gonna have to, tomorrow's video, maybe I'll go over the long-range precipitation forecast. Today we have a moderate categorical risk, enhanced, in Nebraska, extreme south, east South Dakota, slight risk Wyoming, up into Minnesota, and around the enhanced risk there. This is driven by, you have a 2% tornado risk in these areas, enhanced 30% hatch risk for wind. You have a 30% wind risk with a 10% hatch, which means within that hatched area you have a chance of seeing the wind 60 knots or greater today, than 25 miles on a point. Hail isn't big of a threat, but you have a large slight risk area here. Day 2, risk moves to the east, slight risk near Chicago, Illinois, Wisconsin, marginal risk. The Central Plains to the Great Lakes, tornado risk really over that same area where you have your slight risk. Wind, slight risk, 10%, 5%. And wind is chance of 15 knot or greater winds with 10% or 5% chance of 15 knot or greater winds within 25 miles of a point. Hail is a bigger threat out on the front range of the Rockies, which is not uncommon. So if we go to day 3, for the first time in a while, not any outlook for any severe weather, although along to the right, if a such system does develop along the Gulf Coast here, we could see a slight or marginal risk where it might come ashore. As far as the tropics go, all eyes are on the Gulf of Mexico in the coming days. What I'd like to do is go through the different model outputs. Interestingly enough, we now looks like some of the models are latching on to. You have the EC. There's a lot more model members in the different models that. This is the 14th, but let me move forward. See if I can move to today. I can't start any earlier than then. Anyway, let's see. Go back. All right. So we have three different the EC, the MWF, IRES, EC, MWF ensembles, and the Weather Next Gen AI, which is a Google model, all depicting a low pressure system moving just to the left of New Orleans in 2 days. However, this is like the mean track of these three lows. But based on what I saw from yesterday compared to today, this is a lot more agreement, a lot more model members that are showing something develop out here. That being said, I'd just like to go through the ensembles, which we talked about yesterday. And this is the European ensemble members. And you can see for today, well, for the 17th, you see quite a lot of agreement on something developing along and moving in around the New Orleans area. And that's critical, right? Wherever along to the right of where it moves onshore, is the biggest threat for storm surge. Now, if it's a weak system, the biggest threat would be rainfall. But any storm surge into New Orleans is no bueno. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. The super ensemble isn't that bullish on. It has kind of a broad low pressure with not a lot of members agreeing. And the GFS was really the same way. And yesterday, when I was looking at the European output, it had lost the system altogether. And it showed nothing over here. I'm not sure what happened with that. But so what's the system working with when it moves through here? If we look at the European model and the upper level wind shear pattern, so we're looking at today. This is today about 8 a.m. It shows a low pressure off the southeast coast, which we know that's there. You have some northerly flow right over top of it, and you have a high pressure system like driving it with a upper level low. See the flow here, with a really small high pressure cell to the south. You can see the system is kind of pushed. There's not a lot of room for the system to really develop, although there appears to be a high pressure system that develops over top. Which could, if that plays out, that could be a reflection of the system at the surface, when you have tropical systems develop, they try to support their own environment. So um, we'll just have to see how that plays out. But shear 850 millibar wind shear is important because tropical systems need to be vertically stacked. If the thunderstorms from the top get sheared off, then they can't develop. They either remain weak or don't develop at all. But given that the European wants to develop a small high pressure over top of it, might give it a chance to develop more than other models are depicting. Um, I'm gonna bring it back to the 500 millibar level where they have like a depicts the vortex at 500 millibars. It shows nothing extremely strong, but you can see right there it is kind of stronger as it comes on shore there, but not too intense really. It doesn't get very deep. You see, it doesn't even show low pressure really. Anything of note. This is the operational run, so the ensemble kind of shows something different. So I'm not really convinced that the operational run is what is reflecting the ensemble members. So I think it's still quite uncertain what's going to develop here. And given that, let's show you there's a 40% chance of this developing now, according to the National Hurricane Center. I think we're going to have to wait till it gets over the Gulf and see whether um, it develops in the lines. Is able to get organized. When it goes over land, it's not going to do much. And given the model disagreement on the strength of the system, I would venture to say it could make it to tropical storm status. But as of right now, I don't see indications of it getting any stronger than that. And once it gets over the Gulf, I'll start looking at the hurricane models, which now, because it's an invest, can be used. But I don't think there's a lot of value in doing it until we have a system that's over the Gulf and see whether we have low pressure there. So stay tuned, and we'll keep you advised on the developments here. Have a great day.